Zaktar flexed his 4 primary hunting claws, each one capable of slicing through titanium like it was some kind of, well, softer titanium. The elite Rexilian warrior stood 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh light of the twin suns. Behind him, his hunting pack of 12 seasoned predators checked their plasma rifles one final time. Their mission: to capture a human, a creature so seemingly insignificant, yet deemed a potential threat by the ever-cautious Galactic Council. The absurdity of it still made Zaktar's mandibles click in amusement. Vex Cole, his second in command, gestured toward the planetary scanner with obvious disdain. The Galactic Council wants us to capture this? The device displayed a small, pink, remarkably squishy-looking bipedal creature. Look at it, Zaktar. No claws, no fangs, no armor plating. It doesn't even have proper scales. Vex's voice was laced with a mixture of disbelief and boredom. This was supposed to be an elite mission? A glorified insect hunt. Zaktar consulted the readouts again. The Council's assessment felt almost like a joke. The Council classifies these humans as a potential threat level. Can you believe that? A threat? He gestured at the readout showing the creature's pathetic vital statistics. Maximum speed barely faster than a Rexilian hatchling. Bite force weaker than a domestic grooming beetle. Muscle density absolutely laughable. He remembered the intelligence briefing. The human homeworld, Terra, had been dubbed a death world by some more melodramatic early scouts, a classification that only added to the Rexilians' amusement. How could a planet spawn anything truly dangerous when its dominant species was this, soft? Thakmor, the pack's demolitions expert, a stocky, obsidian-shelled alien with a perpetually suspicious gaze, offered a thought. Maybe they're poisonous? Some of the smallest prey species compensate with toxins. His species was known for its caution, often to the point of paranoia, but even Thakmor seemed to struggle with the notion of this human being a threat. Negative, Zaktar replied, consulting his bioscanner. No venom glands, no toxic skin secretions, no defensive chemicals whatsoever. He zoomed in on a holographic display of the human's internal systems, a complex, yet surprisingly delicate network of organs. These things are literally walking meat bags with delusions of intelligence. A collective rumble of low, guttural chuckles went through the hunting pack. The mission was a formality, a waste of their considerable talents. They were Rexilians, apex predators of their own harsh homeworld, masters of the hunt. Capturing a human would be less a challenge and more a tedious exercise in restraint. Their advanced stealth generators, humming silently, rendered the hunting pack invisible to primitive human technology as they moved through the dense vegetation of the human colony world. The air was thick with unfamiliar floral scents, and the ground underfoot was surprisingly soft, almost spongy in places. This planet, designated Garden World Gamma 7 by the Council's less imaginative cartographers, was certainly more hospitable than their own volcanic, sulfur-laced homeworld. Too hospitable, perhaps, which explained why these fragile humans could even survive here. Through the undergrowth, they could see their target, a lone human female, apparently conducting some kind of geological survey. She had short dark hair, pulled back from her face, and wore simple, muted-colored clothing that offered zero protection against, well, anything really. No body armor, no personal energy shield, not even a simple vibroknife at her hip. She was utterly unequipped for any form of self-defense. This was almost too easy. Zaktar read from his intelligence briefing. Maya Torres. Engineer, age 28, specializes in planetary resource extraction. He scrolled through her profile. No military training, no combat experience, no augmentations or genetic modifications. He paused, a flicker of something akin to intrigue stirring within him. Wait, it says here she once participated in something called mixed martial arts for recreation. How adorable. The data described it as a form of unarmed combat practiced for sport among humans, involving grappling and striking. It sounded like glorified wrestling among soft-bodied creatures, utterly irrelevant in a galaxy of plasma weapons and energy shields. The human, Maya Torres, was completely oblivious to their presence. She knelt beside some mottled, reddish-brown rocks, meticulously making notes on a primitive handheld device. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her movements precise as she used a small, archaic tool to chip away a sample. She looked so fragile, so utterly defenseless. Zakhtar almost felt guilty about what came next. Almost. The mission was paramount, and pity was a weakness he couldn't afford. Besides, the Council wanted this specimen alive and relatively undamaged. Stunners, minimal force, he ordered his pack, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. The Council wants this specimen alive and relatively undamaged for the arena trials. Try not to break too many of its bones. The thought of such a delicate creature in the Rexilian arena, facing even a low-tier predator, was almost laughable. It would be over in seconds, a pathetic display. Still, orders were orders. He gave the silent signal, and 3 of his most agile hunters surged forward, their stun projectors humming, ready to secure their prize. The capture took exactly 4.2 seconds. The stun beams, set to their lowest power, hit Maya simultaneously, and her small, fragile body slumped to the ground, her primitive device clattering beside her. Zakhtar approached, a faint click of satisfaction emanating from his mandibles. This mission was far too simple for the esteemed Rexilian hunting pack. Perhaps the Council's threat assessment was just a bureaucratic overreaction. He leaned over the unconscious human, a hint of curiosity in his multifaceted eyes, examining the strange, soft texture of her skin. The entire galaxy would soon see how easily these so-called threats were handled. The stun beams had dropped Maya Torres like a puppet with cut strings. Zakhtar and his pack moved in, their massive forms casting long, alien shadows over her prone figure. Vex Cole, always eager to prove his efficiency, reached out a clawed hand, intending to secure the specimen. But as his fingers brushed her primitive clothing, the human's eyes snapped open. They were not the vacant, unfocused eyes of a stunned creature. They blazed with a raw, primal fury that made even Zakhtar, a seasoned hunter, pause for a microsecond. The stunners, set to minimal force to avoid bone breakage, had only served to mildly irritate Maya. To a Rexilian, whose nervous system processed energy differently, minimal would barely cause a twitch. To a human, it was like a sudden, jarring electric shock, unpleasant, but far from debilitating, especially for someone with her unique training. Before Vex could react, before his brain could even register the impossible speed of her movement, Maya Torres twisted. It was a fluid, explosive motion that belied her squishy appearance. Her arm, once seemingly limp, whipped up with astonishing force. Her knuckles, hardened by years of mixed martial arts training, connected with the side of Vex's jaw with a sickening crunch. The sound, amplified by the Rexilian's dense exoskeleton, echoed through the quiet clearing. Vex Cole, a warrior who had faced charging megabeasts and survived plasma blasts, let out a high-pitched, involuntary shriek of pain. His head snapped sideways, his mandibles, usually locked in an intimidating display, were now hanging at an unnatural angle. A fine spray of greenish-black hemolymph, Rexilian blood, splattered across Zakhtar's gleaming carapace. Vex stumbled backward, disoriented, clutching his rapidly swelling jaw, his multifaceted eyes wide with shock and agony. The entire hunting pack froze. This was not in the briefing. This was not how walking meat bags behaved. Zakhtar, for the first time in his long and bloody career, felt a cold tendril of something akin to fear coil in his gut. His bioscanner, which minutes ago read pathetic vital statistics, was now screaming alarms. The human's muscle density readings were spiking, her internal energy output rocketing past anything deemed laughable. Maya Torres didn't waste the momentary confusion. She didn't try to run, nor did she cower. Instead, she rose, slowly, deliberately, like a predator stretching after a long nap. Her eyes, still locked on the reeling Vex, narrowed. "You wasted my time," she snarled, her voice low and rough, but carrying an intensity that cut through the silence. "I was just about to find a grade A geological anomaly. And you shocked me." Her gaze then swept across the rest of the silent, stunned pack, lingering on Zaktar. The Rexilians, hunters of 1,000 worlds, suddenly found themselves in the role of the hunted. They were designed for overwhelming force, for precise, dispassionate takedowns. They were not designed for this. They had always operated on the assumption of their inherent superiority, of the cosmic hierarchy where they stood near the top. This creature, this meat bag, had just shattered that assumption, along with Vex's jaw. Thakmor, the demolitions expert, was the first to recover. He raised his plasma rifle, but Zaktar's voice, sharper than any blade, cut him off. "Hold fire. Do not engage. Reevaluate target." Zaktar's mind was racing. This was unprecedented. No species with such fragile biology should possess such aggressive, explosive power. The mixed martial arts note in her profile suddenly took on a terrifying new meaning. It wasn't recreation, it was training. Training for situations exactly like this. Maya took a step forward. Each footfall seemed to echo with newfound weight, or perhaps it was just the sudden, crushing realization of the Rexilians. She didn't look like a scientist anymore, she looked like a territorial beast. Her posture shifted subtly, her weight balanced, her hands slightly raised, a posture that Zaktar, with his lifetime of predatory instincts, recognized as preparation for a fight. Not a flight. A fight. The stunned silence of the jungle was broken only by Vex's pained gasps and the soft whirring of the Rexilian stealth generators, now serving only to conceal their collective astonishment rather than their presence. The twin suns beat down, highlighting the tension in the clearing. This was no longer a simple capture mission. This was an encounter with something unknown, something that defied all their classifications and expectations. And Zaktar knew, with chilling certainty, that the real hunt had just begun. And they were not the hunters anymore. Zaktar's internal bioscanner screeched new warnings. Maya Torres, far from being subdued, was radiating a burst of bioelectrical energy that made her seem impossibly dangerous. Her eyes were still locked onto the pack, moving from one alien to another, assessing them with a cold, calculating gaze that belied her squishy form. The initial stun had worn off, replaced by an adrenaline surge that made her movements even faster, more precise. "What are its combat protocols?" Zaktar demanded, his voice a low growl, directed at his tactical display. "What is its threat level now?" The display flickered, struggling to recalibrate. The previous threat level, negligible, had been replaced by threat level, unknown, extreme volatility detected. It was an unheard-of classification. Maya didn't wait for them. With a sudden burst of speed that defied her earlier, pathetic vital statistics, she lunged at Thakmor, the demolition expert. Thakmor, still recovering from the shock of Vex's injury, barely had time to raise his plasma rifle. But Maya wasn't going for the weapon. Her target was the vulnerable joint of his leg, just above the knee, where his thick carapace didn't quite meet. She dropped low, a move so fluid and unexpected it baffled the rigid Rexilian combat training, and swept his leg out from under him. Thakmor, a creature designed for brute force and heavy weaponry, bellowed as he crashed to the ground, his plasma rifle skittering across the dirt. Before he could recover, Maya was on him, her knee driving into his armored chest, a surprising amount of weight behind the blow. Another of her mixed martial arts techniques, Zaktar realized with growing horror. The human was using her entire body as a weapon, leveraging her mass and speed in ways that shouldn't be possible for a creature without an exoskeleton. The rest of the pack finally moved. Two hunters, Krlax and Xylo, raised their stunners, aiming for a full-power incapacitation this time. But Maya, even while pinning Thakmor, seemed to sense their intentions. She rolled off Thakmor, using his bulk as a shield just as the stun beam sizzled past, narrowly missing her head. The beam struck a nearby tree, charring its bark and making it smoke. "Do not use lethal force," Zaktar roared. The council wanted her alive. But alive was becoming an increasingly difficult proposition when the specimen was actively trying to break his team's faces and limbs. Maya was on her feet in an instant, circling. Her movements were economic, precise. Every step was measured, every glance calculated. She was no longer just a scientist, she was a predator, adapting to new prey. Her eyes scanned their forms, undoubtedly looking for weaknesses, for seams in their armor, for vulnerable joints. The Rexilians, for all their combat prowess, were designed for frontal assaults, for overwhelming strength against lesser foes. They were not designed for this kind of fluid, unpredictable, low-to-the-ground fighting. Zaktar knew he had to regain control. Pack. Form defensive perimeter. Isolate the target. He tried to sound authoritative, but a tremor of uncertainty ran through his voice. His hunters, though disciplined, were clearly unnerved. They moved to surround Maya, their plasma rifles humming, but they kept a wider distance than usual. The incident with Vex had taught them caution. Maya, however, saw the perimeter as an opportunity. As Krlax and Xylo tried to flank her, she feigned a move toward Xylo, drawing him forward, then pivoted sharply, using Krlax's own momentum against him. Her elbow struck Krlax's exposed neck joint with a sharp, sickening thud. The Rexilian warrior gagged, his compound eyes rolling back in his head as he staggered backward, momentarily stunned, his stunner dropping uselessly. This was not warfare as the Rexilians understood it. This was something barbaric, personal, and terrifyingly effective. Humans didn't rely on technology, they relied on raw, applied physics and an insane tolerance for pain, both their own and inflicted. The entire pack was now wary, hesitant. They were used to their prey fleeing, screaming, or fighting with predictable, desperate flailing. Maya was none of those things. She was a silent, efficient engine of destruction, moving with a grace that belied her destructive power. Zaktar watched her, a knot of dread tightening in his chest. This was going to be a long hunt, and the prey was hunting back. The air crackled with tension. Zaktar's once unflappable composure was eroding with every calculated move Maya Torres made. 3 of his elite warriors were now incapacitated or severely hampered, Vex with a shattered jaw, Thakmor nursing a bruised, possibly fractured leg joint, and Krlax staggering, momentarily dazed. All without a single piece of human technology. This meat bag was dismantling his highly trained unit with nothing but her soft limbs and a terrifying understanding of anatomy. Maintain distance. Do not close in. Zaktar barked, overriding his pack's aggressive instincts. He understood now. This was not a creature that could be simply rushed and overpowered. Her apparent fragility was a deceptive cloak, concealing a core of condensed, explosive violence. She was a master of leveraging her mass, her speed, and her environment. The remaining hunters, Garen, Rax, and the twin sharpshooters, Jlix and Klix, kept their plasma rifles trained on Maya. Their movements were jerky, uncertain. They were designed to operate in synchronized precision, but their foe was chaotic, unpredictable. Maya, sensing their hesitation, didn't press her advantage immediately. Instead, she took a moment, a deep, shuddering breath, her chest rising and falling visibly. It was a strange, vulnerable display that somehow made her even more terrifying. It was the breath of a predator preparing for its next strike. Zaktar's mind raced, cycling through every known combat doctrine, every predatory instinct. Nothing fit. Human anatomy was a mystery to them beyond its basic biological functions. They had never encountered a species that could generate such internal force without visible muscular augmentation or skeletal reinforcement. Her bones, according to the scanner, were surprisingly porous compared to their own dense structures, yet she had just broken Vex's jaw, a jaw strong enough to crush bone steel. She's targeting weak points, Zaktar realized aloud, his voice barely a whisper through his comm unit. Joints, exposed neck, sensory organs. He remembered the mixed martial arts briefing, focus strikes, leverage, submission holds. These were not the tactics of a primitive creature, they were the tactics of a specialized killer. Suddenly, Maya moved. She didn't charge, she rolled. A sudden, unexpected tumble that took her out of the laser sights of Jlicks and Clicks. She landed, fluidly, behind a thick, gnarled tree trunk, the very one that Kr Lax's stun beam had charred moments ago. Her form vanished. Where is she? Rax bellowed, his rifle sweeping frantically. Stay calm. Maintain formation. Zaktar commanded, but panic was beginning to infect his pack. A Rexilian hunter, deprived of a visible target, often reverted to aggressive, unfocused sweeps. This was exactly what Maya wanted. A low growl emanated from behind them. It wasn't Maya. It was a native beast of this garden world, a large, six-legged creature with a powerful jaw, attracted by the commotion and the smell of fresh hemolymph from Vex. The Rexilian hunters, momentarily distracted by the new threat and their unseen human foe, turned their weapons towards the approaching beast. This was Maya's moment. As Jlicks and Clicks pivoted to target the native animal, she burst from behind the tree. She wasn't just fast, she was a blur. She moved like a phantom, closing the distance to Garen, the heaviest of the remaining hunters, before he could even register her presence. Her arm shot out, not in a punch, but in a precise, almost surgical strike to the side of Garen's helmet. There was a faint, metallic ping, and then a crackling sound as Garen's integrated comm unit, directly connected to his auditory sensors, short-circuited. He staggered, clutching his head, a high-pitched whine emanating from his helmet. He was deafened, disoriented, blind to his immediate surroundings due to the feedback loop in his internal systems. Zaktar roared in frustration. This human wasn't fighting them, she was dismantling them, piece by agonizing piece. She was exploiting their technology, their reliance on vision and communication, and their shock. He raised his own plasma rifle, aiming carefully. He had to take her down himself. Council orders or not, this creature was a danger to his entire unit. He fired.